Wellbeing in Changing Times. So we're intending to have many more of these events going forward over the sort of coming weeks and months, actually. As we see it, a great opportunity for networking with everybody, and the different events will consist of various different subjects. So we felt today that, the subject of well-being in the workplace is a very, very topical subject, as I'm sure you'll all agree, with everything that's going on in the world at the moment, not even just in the workplace. So for those of you who don't know me, I'm sure some of you do, but for those of you who don't, my name's Anne Holmes and I'm an Account Director with SVL Business Solutions. We're really lucky today to have a great speaker, Lesley Malcolm, who's the Director with M55 People and also the Chair of the CIPD for the West of Scotland. So welcome, Lesley, and thanks very much for agreeing to speak for us today. I'm sure you'll really enjoy what Lesley's got to say, and it will resonate with a lot of you. We've also got one of our directors, Peter Goff, who's going to host a Kahoot quiz at the end. That's a bit of fun, about a serious subject, but Kahoot is a great app. So if you haven't done so already, make sure you download the Kahoot app on your mobile phone so that you can participate with the quiz at the end.
Yeah, it'd be really useful if your Kahoot app can be on a device that you're not using to watch the presentation today.
Yeah, okay, great. And in terms of questions, if you want to ask questions throughout, you can use the chat function, and we have Paul, our marketing manager, sort of monitoring that for questions, and we'll answer what we can at the end, depending on time. But rest assured, everybody will get an answer to their question. We'll get them to you afterwards. If time allows, we might invite you on screen to ask your question, but we'll see how things go in terms of time. So just a little bit of housekeeping. So we've mentioned downloading the Kahoot app on a separate device so you can participate in the quiz. But also if everyone could stay in mute except the people who are actually speaking during the event, and maybe keep your cameras off unless you want to ask a question at some point. But other than that, I think we're good to go. So we chose the subject of well-being for this first event because it's just very, very topical and something that we as an organisation are pretty passionate about anyway. Some of you will have joined us last year for the events that we hosted in Glasgow around the subject of employee engagement. They were very well attended and very well received, and we feel that well-being, mental health and employee engagement all sort of fit together in one way, shape or form, and we'll go into a bit more detail as we go through the event today. We'll have the interactive quiz towards the end, hosted by none other than Peter. And also we have a little LinkedIn group called the EEM WFM Networking Group. The details of it are on the screen, but after this event we'll personally invite you all to join us, and it would be great if you could join. We share content on a regular basis in that channel. So the key takeaways from today, what we hope you get from it, is understand a bit more about what is wellbeing at work. What does that mean to people, and what's sort of good practice, and how does it impact your sort of productivity and employee engagement on a day-to-day basis? Are there unique challenges facing staff? Well, I think we can quite happily say, well, at the moment, yes, there are very unique challenges facing most of us. We're all having to learn to work differently at the moment, and potentially for the foreseeable future, and maybe forever. Nobody knows. We don't know how things are going to pan out in the long term, and we all just have to be sort of prepared for that and very conscious of how people are feeling day to day while having to work potentially in a very, very different way in a different environment. And Lesley's got some great ideas about some techniques that we can use to combat stress and to sort of improve and maintain mental health during this difficult time that we're all facing. So we SVL, we like to think of ourselves as slightly different from a lot of other organisations out there. And I personally, with some of my other colleagues, in particular Richard Abdy, have spent the last year or more building what we see as a true WFM practice. Now, WFM is short for workforce management, for those of you who don't know, but it's a bit more than that. We're trying to take a very agnostic approach to the marketplace and a very consultative approach with so the people that we're speaking to on a day-to-day basis. And part of that, we have been hosting these very successful networking groups, which allows people to meet each other, share ideas, share best practice, and that's what we want to continue to do around not just WFM and employee engagement, but lots of other subjects that we as an organisation are passionate about. So I hope you can join us for lots of these events going forward. So engagement, what does that mean? I mean, it means lots of things. Certainly mental health comes into it and how people are feeling in your organisation. And I think if your staff feel trusted and engaged and empowered, then they'll be a lot happier at their work, which is what most organisations want from their employees. I think there's been a real big shift in the marketplace in most working environments. Companies really care about their staff and they want them to be part of the business on a day-to-day.
Unknown participant is now joining.
And feel very... Did anybody else hear that, Peter? Did you hear that?
Yeah, we heard it.
So it was just a message came through in my headphones there.
Someone joined a phone number and not a name, so it just comes up as an unknown participant, that's all.
Threw me off my stride. So that's what we want to talk to you about today. And as I say, we're very lucky to have Lesley, who's an expert in this field, who's going to talk to us in a bit more detail about mental health in particular. So without further ado, I want to introduce you to Lesley Malcolm from M55 People. Lesley, do you want to just introduce yourself a bit more detailed?
Yeah, thank you, Anne. Morning, everybody. As Anne said, my name is Lesley Malcolm and I'm from M55 People. And M55 People is kind of what it says in the tin, a people development organisation. We deal in things like leadership development, we deal in management development, but very much our focus is well-being. And we believe that well-being should be a business metric and a serious business metric. Yes, we do things like mental health first aid, we do things like mental health awareness and all that sort of training, but it's about developing strategies for organisations around the well-being. And as I said, why should well-being be a business metric? Well, to be honest with you, even in a global sense now, we're looking at well-being from the perspective of it's actually a better indicator of, if you like, overall health, happiness, productivity than even GDP. As Robert Kennedy said back in the 60s, what GDP doesn't measure is what actually makes life worth living. So in that respect, countries like New Zealand, for example, have actually set up well-being as a country metric and within their GDP, and Scotland and Iceland are looking at that. So this is something, from a global perspective is definitely gaining traction. And so from a business perspective, what I'm saying is that, focusing on well-being actually makes good business sense. And obviously at this time, in terms of how that you manage your employee, your own personal well-being and your employee well-being will actually pay dividends moving forward, because we remember how we were treated, at these times. So, how you look after your employees is very, very important sort of moving forward. So, moving on to our first slide. So what is well-being? Well, as it says in the slide, it's basically a balance between our psychological, social and physical resources versus the challenges that we're facing psychologically, socially and physically. And from that perspective, again, the challenges that we normally face psychologically, socially and physically can be overwhelming with us on a day-to-day basis. But the challenges we're facing just now, over and above that, for many people can be making life quite tough. In terms of the challenges that they're facing, in terms of the worry, in terms of what's going to happen from the point of view of the pandemic, what's going to happen within their job, all of those sort of things. And our brain basically it works in a threat or reward scenario. And so from that perspective, at the minute, more often than not, it's probably in threat mode. And all these new things that are coming towards us, it's a little bit like, taking taking the analogy the government were using, it's a little bit like a train coming towards us, because we've never dealt with it before, and our brain is saying, move away from the light, move away from the track. It doesn't want to go there, and therefore makes us quite anxious and want to move away from it. Whereas, what we're saying is we need to build techniques in order to be able to deal with all this newness that's coming at us. From a social perspective, the challenges we've got, we may be dealing with, not being able to see our friends, not being able to see our families, etc. And also, not have that interactive touch that is important to us as human beings. We're social animals. And of course, all of this can impact on our physical health, and we might actually have underlying physical illnesses at the minute, and we're not necessarily, dealing with them the right way, because some of us might not be going to hospital when we should be, etc. So, these are the additional challenges that we are facing. And of course, what the resources means is basically, from that perspective, how resilient are we in all of these? How resilient do we feel to be able to cope with that? And for many of us, we might be struggling to, if you like, get into our resilience buckets and pull out that extra resilience to help us get through the day. So it's that balance in terms of how we're feeling. So next slide, thank you. So most of you probably are familiar with what we call the pressure performance curve. So in terms of, from a work perspective, or just our general day-to-day performance, what we do know is that, yes, as human beings, we actually need pressure. Now, what I mean by that is good pressure versus bad stress. So, if you look at the curve, what we've got at the bottom here, where we've got the meeting of the pressure performance, that's where, for example, we don't have any pressure. We perhaps from a work point of view we don't have the work that we need. We can't get the technology to work. We're not able to contact our boss, etc., because of the situation just now. So in many ways, we're on a go slow. We're not stimulated enough, is what we're seeing in that respect. But I have to ask, think about a time, perhaps even for those of you that perhaps don't recognise that go slow, has there ever been a time where you didn't have enough work? And I certainly know that there's been times in my career where, perhaps towards the end of a restructure, you're the last person turning out the lights, etc. And as a result, I actually made more mistakes. I wasn't engaged. I wasn't focused in any way, shape or form. So essentially, I was almost in rust out. But as the pressure, and as I said, positive pressure starts to increase, we get to the place where we're at our peak. And that's where we feel good of ourselves. That's where we feel like, we're on top of the world, we're taking on the challenges. And psychologically, we believe that we have the skills, we have the resources, we have the training, we have the support to be able to achieve what we want to achieve. Because from a work perspective in particular, we all do actually want to achieve. We want to walk out each night feeling a sense of satisfaction. And that's how we feel about life generally. So when we're at our peak, we're absolutely at our best. And of course, then, but as the pressure, if you like, starts to mount, then we start to get into the stress zone. And when we get into the stress zone, that's when, as I say, as you can see, that's when our performance or our productivity actually starts to taper off as well, until we get right down to the very bottom when we're actually in distress. And in that respect, we're totally overwhelmed. So, and that particular curve, you might be going through all of those at any one time throughout the day. There might be times when you're going to go slow. There might be times when you're absolutely at your peak. And there might be times when you're in the stress zone for a while. And that's okay. That's normal. What we want is that people are at their peak the majority of the day. So what I would just like to do in terms of, again, just adding a bit of interactivity, is perhaps get you to vote. We're going to use a poll, and I'm going to hand over to Peter to conduct the poll for us.
Okay, morning everyone. I think someone's just joined that may have their mic unmuted. Because everyone just make sure your mic's muted just now, please? So good morning. I have the responsibility of running the Kahoot function today. So this is the bit that just takes a little couple of minutes just to get you all logged in. So if you could just open up your Kahoot app on your device that you're going to use to answer the questions. And the good news is I'm only going to ask you to do this once, because once you're in the game, which we're going to use for this poll, we'll then just stay logged in and we'll use that for the quiz at the end. So a little bit of fun after the presentations are finished. So I'll just share my screen just now and you'll get the PIN number. If you've never used Kahoot before, when you first launch it, it does come and ask you to ask you some various questions and to register. You can just skip through that, just ignore it, and just go with the just enter PIN. So at the very bottom middle of your screen, you'll see the option to enter PIN number. So hopefully you can all see my screen, and that's the PIN number I need you all to enter. So if you put that in and then type your player name in, and that will add you into the lobby, and then we're going to ask the poll question. All the players are flying in now, so that's great. I think most people know what they're doing with Kahoot, which is excellent. Just give this a minute or two. So as I say, first time you launch Kahoot, if you've never used it before, it will ask you to register and do various other things. Just ignore it, just skip through it, and get to the point where you can just enter the PIN number. So a few more to go. And as I say, once you're logged into this, once we've had the results of the poll question, just leave your app open, just leave yourself logged in, because we're going to go back to this once Lesley's presentation has finished. Still waiting a few more, give me another minute or so. What's my number? What's my magic number, Paul, that I'm waiting for?
There are currently 45 people here in total. So I don't know whether all of them are going to participate in the quiz, but you certainly have a grand total of 45.
Okay. We'll give it another few seconds then. There's still some people coming in. So we have a few internal people from SVL on this morning as well, so possibly they will not all take part in the Kahoot. There's a couple that spring to mind. They'll just be ignoring me right now. Oh, we're getting a few more coming in now. Okay, 10 more seconds. So this first question you're going to be asked in Kahoot, there is no points. This is really just to gauge the feeling of the audience for Lesley as part of our presentation.
Unknown participant is now exiting.
Oh, the person with the phone number has decided to leave us. When you're on just a telephone, presentations like this are not much use because you can't see what's going on the screen. So understand why they've left us. So yeah, so there's no points for this. So there's no correct answer. This is literally just to gauge how the audience is feeling just now. But the quiz will follow on from this, and there are points to be earned. Oh, we've just lost a player from Kahoot. So I'm going to just click start just now, and the poll question will come up. Just take your time and choose the answer, and then we can discuss the results. Here we go. How are you feeling just now? So based on Lesley's presentation that she's just been discussing on the curve. So there you are. So no one's too stressed to even know. So I suppose that's great news. And if you haven't used Kahoot before, you'll now have discovered that you use the app on your phone, you choose the corresponding colour, and that's what you need to know for the quiz moving forward. So now you're all experts at it. The quiz should be good fun when we move on to that. We have an even spread, Lesley. What's your thoughts?
I know, that's good. Although normally it's most people kind of at my peak, so might be a few people that are struggling with their at the minute in their stress zone. It might be using Kahoot. And on a go slow, so perhaps they're quite cool and chilled out, and that's great. You know, as long as we get to peaks at some point.
Absolutely. Okay, Anne, you can just share your screen again.
Okay.
There we go.
Right. So just to recap, basically what we're saying is that the stress zone, being in the stress zone too much. I mean, and that's obviously where we don't want people obviously in the go slow. We want people to be stimulated. We want people to be feel that they're achieving something, because that gives us a sense of worth, and that helps with our general well-being. But where people are in the stress zone, and within the workplace particularly, and within this particular environment that we are living and working at the minute, being in the stress zone obviously can ultimately affect us physically. It affects us cognitively. It can affect us emotionally, and it can affect us behaviourally. And and in terms of some of the physical illnesses that ultimately too much stress can have, we're talking about things like diabetes, we're talking about things like cancers, we're talking about things like high blood pressure, heart, cardiac issues. So these are not minor issues that ultimately living in that stress zone too long can be. So for those of you perhaps that are line managers, for example, what I'd be saying is that, yes, you need to be looking after your own well-being and be very, very aware of your own feelings, and you are managing yourself, but equally be checking in on people, and understanding where they are in terms of on the majority of the time on that stress zone. And why is that important? Because as the slide in front of you says, the impact on productivity, and productivity to certainly relates very much to engagement. So and research has shown that where employees spend most of their time at their peak, organisations are up to 29% more productive. Now, who wouldn't want that? That is ultimately what we want. And when people are at their peak, as I said, people are motivated, and if they're motivated, they're much more creative. They're much more engaged. They feel part of something, and when we feel part of something, we want to give more to it. We feel a sense of challenge, and yes, it might be a stretch goal, but ultimately, as I said, we believe that we have the resources, we have the capability, we have the support in order to ultimately achieve, and ultimately they enjoy work. And as I said, if they enjoy work, they're engaged. And as a result, the organisation benefits. So it's a kind of win-win for everybody. The challenge is that keeping people at their peak, bearing in mind that we all have our own individual external factors, can be hard, because we don't necessarily know what's going on other people's lives. So can we, next slide, please? And just thinking about the current challenges, in terms of, and yes, there is the global pandemic which is causing all this, but for us at the minute, most of us, if not all of us, are working from home, but it's not working from home as we know it. Some of us are working from home whilst trying to manage childcare, whilst trying to homeschool. Some of us are trying to share workspace with a partner. Some of us don't have any suitable workspace. We might be sitting on the edge of a bed with a laptop. We might actually be supporting a vulnerable person and trying to work. We might actually be a vulnerable person and trying to work. If we're living on our own, again, we're starting perhaps to feel isolated because we don't have that day-to-day human interactivity. And as a result, we might start to be feeling anxious. So it's not working from home, it's working from home in a crisis. And so from that perspective, I'd be saying, again, it's important that we support each other. We make sure that we do check in with each other, in terms of, and again, for those of you that are managing people, understand what challenges your people have, and checking and making sure that, they are okay. You might not want to do an awful lot, but the reality is that even checking in makes a big difference in terms of helping people manage their stress levels, because they feel reassured. And again, as it says there, if there are any other things that you can think of in terms of the challenges that we are facing, feel free to let us know in the chat box, because that can be, part of the discussion. Next slide, thanks, Anne. And in terms of being able to understand what's happening to us just now, David Rock's SCARF model is actually quite a good model to be able to identify the various triggers that might be within us. So looking at the SCARF model, as you can see, it begins the first letter of each of those words, the status, the certainty, the autonomy, the relationship, the fairness, makes up SCARF. And basically, from a status perspective, what might be happening to people is that we're starting to feel a wee bit isolated. Perhaps people aren't getting in touch with us. We don't feel as heard as we should do. Perhaps those of you that do manage people are finding it difficult to manage people because you perhaps, you know, you're used to managing them within a group within the workplace, and it's very different trying to manage people from a home perspective. You know, so you're feeling like your status is being diminished. You're feeling like perhaps you're not being as heard as much as you could be. And then probably one of the biggest one for all of us, certainty. You know, our ability to predict the future. And from a traditional perspective within an organisation, those at the top of the organisation tend to have more certainty than as we work down the organisation. But in this scenario, in terms of a global pandemic, none of us have any certainty. None of us know what's going to happen. So we've all got this inability to predict the future. And that in itself, as I mentioned earlier, in terms of how our brain works, is very, very disorientating from our brain, and as a result can trigger that anxiety within many of us. And, you know, moving on from that, then from certainty to autonomy, how can we control over events? Now, yes, we may be being able to, over time, we may be feeling we've got much more control over how homeworking works. And some of us might be feeling a lot better about homeworking, but certainly, again, from a global perspective, we don't have that sense of control. We can't with certainty say what's going to happen tomorrow. You know, so you know, do we get anxious about it, or are we able to let it go? Knowing the things that we don't have that control over. And relatedness. How safe do we feel with others? You know, do we feel that sense of camaraderie even though we are not all sitting in the office? Do we feel that we can relate to people? And you know, again, there are all sorts of scenarios. I mean, I'm the mother of an A&E doctor, for example. So, you know, there is that anxiety, but equally, I know parents and relatives of other people that are frontline workers. So there's that sense of relatedness with us, but still having that uncertainty. But how we feel, how safe we feel with others. Do we feel that others have got our back? And again, from when we're not all in the workplace, that can be much more profound. And of course, fairness. How fair do we feel this change is? And I'm sure all of us feel it's unfair, you know, in terms of what has happened to us all. But there'll be others of us that perhaps are having to deal with the fact that we might have lost people to COVID. We might be dealing with the fact that loved ones are unwell with COVID. And how fair is that? You know, over and above the fact that we may or may not have be feeling settled in this home environment. So, you know, what I would like you to think about is, what are your triggers? Because at least if we can identify what the triggers are, is there anything we can do about it? And if not, do we let it go? You know, and that can be hard, but it's at least having that knowledge and at least being aware of the things that are starting to cause us the anxiety. Because if there is something we can do about it, let's do something about it. If there's not, we need to let it go. So in terms of, you know, if you like, being able to overcome that sense of stress, perhaps, it's about building the resilience muscle. And resilience is pretty much like a muscle in the respect of, it's, you know, some people, yes, are born naturally a bit more laid back and perhaps are a bit more resilient and very quick to learn from things. However, for the rest of us, it's a little bit like going to the gym. You know, we go to the gym, we get to the place where we're happy with our weight, we're happy with our, you know, our muscle tone, etc. But that doesn't mean we can keep eating the pies. You know, we keep having to go back to the gym and make sure that we maintain that. And that's exactly the same with resilience. You know, we have to start adapting some of these techniques and then maintaining them. And what we're saying is there are probably 4 pillars to resilience. It's being adaptable to change. So having that positive mindset, having a sense of purpose, feeling we've got social support, and having confidence and self-esteem in ourselves. And, you know, from adaptability point of view, again, some of us are just more naturally adaptable to change and actually thrive on change. There'll be others, and probably the majority of us, that find change challenging. As I said, the brain starts to come in and starts to put that red alert up and tell us all the reasons why it's going to be bad, as opposed to why it's going to be good. But we can overcome that. You know, we tend to think that when something happens, it's the event that, if you like, brings the consequences. But the reality is that it's actually our belief on that event that brings about the consequences. So the event will happen, then we'll have a thought about it or a belief around it, and then there'll be consequences. But as we know, different people see things in different ways. So it's very much our belief. We are not our thoughts. So it's about having that adaptability to be able to, if you like, change that negative thought process when it becomes in. And that's what kind of separates us from the animals, is our ability to change our thought process, to take that microsecond and actually recognise this is negativity. I'm not my thoughts, and I can change it. I can reframe my thought process. So, you know, and again, it's about recognising, are you glass half empty? Are you glass half full? And if you're glass half empty, you know, then it's about, you know, again, recognising that, you know, are you that person that thinks, oh, this always happens to me? No, it doesn't. This is this one bad thing. Oh, I'm just awful. No, you're not. There are lots of good things that are happening in your life. And, oh, this is it. This is going to be permanent. No, it's not. It's actually temporary. Yes, we don't know how long it's going to go on, but it is temporary. Life will evolve from this moment. So it's about, as I said, changing that mindset. And one of the most effective ways to change mindset is to basically adopt an attitude of gratitude. And therapist friends of mine tell me that the most powerful tool they have is what they call 3 good things, writing down 3 good things every day that happen to you. And we're not talking life-changing events, but we're talking about the fact that I'm awful glad my screen has come back. The fact that, you know, we're glad the technology works. But it takes you from that place of negativity, if you are naturally negative, to over time you start to scan for positives, and therefore you start to do it more naturally. But you have to do it consistently every single day. It's a great exercise. And then having that sense of purpose. And that's why, you know, where we don't want necessarily people on that go slow, we want people to feel they've got a purpose in life, they've got something to live for. They're important, they're valuable. So again, for those of you that are line managers, it's about ensuring people understand what they need to be doing and creating those routines, because those routines, again, give our brain that sense of, oh, it's okay, I know what I'm meant to be doing. And routine is very, very important. So, but that sense of purpose. So my sense of purpose of what I'm meant to be doing, what my team's meant to be doing, and how does my role fit into the organisation's bigger picture, you know, and that gives me that sense of purpose. And of course, have we got social support? Do we? And again, for those and everybody is different in terms of, you know, what their situation is at the minute, you know. So sometimes if we are feeling like we're isolated, is it a case of, you know, we have to remember that we have got personal networks and reaching out to them, you know, starting that Zoom call on a Saturday night with your friends. We have got professional networks, making perhaps 10 o'clock coffee time for the team to get together on Teams, you know, doing those sort of things. We have got, we're part of a team, and we have got those people that give us that tangible support. So sometimes we have to maybe even write it down, and actually, if you haven't got it, make it happen, take the action and be the person. You know, I'll be honest, I've set up various sort of Zoom clubs, if you like, on a Saturday night and a Sunday afternoon. I talk more to my sister in London than I ever done, because I know she lives on her own. But, you know, I knew that it was up to me to make that happen. And having self-confidence in yourself, and again, that's about reminding yourself of the things that you're good at. I always laugh when I do this particular exercise. I ask people to write down 5 things that they're good at. And I have to be honest, they struggle with 3 most of the time. And I used to do a lot of work for an American company and go out to Houston in Texas. And I swear within 2 minutes, they could have given me 10. 5 of them would be rubbish, but it was that different mindset, you know, in terms of their own confidence and their own self-esteem. But it's, you know, it does help us feel good when we do remember that we are good and that we are valuable. And just my last slide, thanks, Anne. And then, of course, in order for us to be able to do all of this, we have to keep the energy matrix alive. And there's four bricks, if you like, go into it: our sleep, our diet, our exercise, and managing stress. For me, sleep is probably one of the most important, and I recognise that a lot of people might be struggling with that just now. And actually, in terms of the World Health Organization, they have actually said that sleep deprivation in the Western world is in fact epidemic proportions. 50% of us are sleep deprived versus 8% of us in 1942. And we know that, you know, again, in terms of what sleep does for us, we can now make that correlation between sleep deprivation in younger life and in Alzheimer's in later life. So that in itself is enough to help us try and make sure that we get between 7 and 9 hours sleep. And there'll be some of you sitting there saying, no, I only need 4. No, you cope better in 4 than me, but we all actually need between 7 and 9 hours sleep. And, you know, there's been loads of research done quite recently, some stuff done in Australia, where they actually looked at where people were sleep deprived, even for a day or 2. And then when you looked at the reactions, the reactions were worse than somebody that was just over the drink driving limit. You know, so that in itself, you know, shows that you're not at your best if you're not able to sleep. And if you are struggling with sleep, there are certain things you can do. You know, it's about making sure that, you know, you do light is very important, that you try and darken the room, perhaps wearing sleep masks, that you do make sure that you're not using these for at least an hour before, or that you have got them turned out off the blue light, because that blue light basically tells our brain it's daylight, you know, keep going. So, you know, and also things like food, not having heavy meals before, you know, we go to bed, so not having loads and loads of pasta, something light. Exercise, very important, but not just before you go to sleep, otherwise you're still going to be pumped up. And keeping your room keeping your room relatively cool. But I mean, I could go on for hours, I have to be honest, with sleep. But what I would say is that, again, for those of you that do have trouble sleeping, it's about trying to, for the hour before you go to bed, making sure that you actually get yourself into a very calm place to again, start telling your brain, this is time for sleep. And you have to do that, you know, over a long period of time before your brain starts to understand, this is what I need to do. And having the same wake time and bedtime every day, even at the weekend. Diet, sugar, you know, and making sure that obviously we do understand that we have to make sure that we have the proper balanced diet. Now, right at the start of this particular incident, if you like, I was probably treating it like Christmas and eating the biggest load of rubbish out. But now I think certainly I, and probably many others, have actually, because we don't have the access to the same sort of, you know, fast food, we're probably more so actually probably doing more home cooking, which is great. But it's, you know, it's making sure that we are doing the most, the best in terms of fruit and veg and, you know, complex carbs, etc. Sugar is our enemy, and certainly processed sugar. You know, we can make the correlation between some processed sugars cause inflammation, which causes that chemical imbalance in the brain, which causes depression. And there is, again, a school of thought that says depression starts in our gut. Exercise, very important. We know scientifically that exercise brings about those feel-good endorphins, which helps us stave off, you know, depression, anxiety, and stress. But also it's about, you know, and it's making sure that in these times that we are getting out there and we are doing that exercise, even that moderate brisk walk for 30 minutes makes a huge difference to us. And as we get older, more strength training to ward off things like osteoporosis, etc. And we are not, and equally, the average UK worker, if you like, sits for 12-hour days. We are not sedentary animals. We need to be moving, so integrating, you know, about 30 minutes, every movement, every 30 minutes into your day if you can. And finally, you know, managing stress, getting control of your emotions. You know, so from a short-term perspective, making sure you're getting breaks, you know, understanding the SCARF model, what are my triggers and what is it that's causing this and what can I do about it? From a medium-term perspective, things like mindfulness, hugely powerful. 10 minutes a day over a 6-week period, we know that we can change the brain. That part of the brain that deals with irrational thought and fear actually reduces, and the part of the brain that deals with rational thought increases. And there are loads of apps out there. But like anything else, it's something you have to maintain, you have to keep doing, because it seems so simple, people don't understand, believe it can work. But what it actually does is it helps us focus, it helps us single task, because multitasking, our brain isn't, you know, we've been sold a pup, our brain is not there for multitasking. And then, of course, just basically building up our personal resilience. Okay, so that's the end, and I hope everybody gets something out of that. And again, if there are any questions at the end, happy to take them. Thank you very much.
Thanks very much, Lesley. Apologies for the slight blip there and losing your presentation. My PC decided for some unknown reason to reset itself, which it's never done before. So that's just typical. So I was probably in the stress zone for a little while there while I was trying to get things back on track. But no, that was absolutely brilliant. Very, very thought-provoking, and I'm sure resonates with a lot of people who are joining us today. Certainly does with me, and makes me think a bit differently about lots of things and how I'm coping with the situation at the moment. Certainly the diet one resonates because I, like you, was treating it like Christmas, and I'm trying to get that back on track and trying to build a bit more exercise into my day. I think, you know, just in summary, to bring it back to the engagement message, as we said, you know, everything that you've said, I totally agree with. And I think that it's really critical for businesses to recognise that this isn't a normal time for people, and they do have to check in with them. And I think if they look after their people well, then the people will look after your customers, which is ultimately what you want, you know, the whole customer experience and customer satisfaction message. So hopefully that'll resonate with everybody who's joining us today. So next, what we're going to do is we are going to do our Kahoot quiz. So over to you, Peter.
Okay, thanks, and thanks, Lesley, for that. Just before I go into Kahoot, it's worth mentioning on the chat, if anyone hasn't had a look, there's been some really good questions and some great networking taking place on the chat today. So it's worth having a look at that. There's been some real thought-provoking stuff there, Lesley, and some great suggestions for solutions to various elements of it. So that's excellent, and that's what we really want in these events. We've very deliberately chosen to use standard Microsoft Teams, ladies and gents, for these meetings, so that it's more like a meeting rather than a linear presentation. You know, we're all used to sitting through webinars that just sort of come at you at the same pace, and we wanted this to be a bit more interactive. So we chose to use this platform, and this is the first time we've done it. So really pleased so far. So thanks for taking part. I'm just going to share my screen now. So back to back to Kahoot. If anyone didn't get the PIN number, I have put it in the chat. If you want to write it down, if you didn't come in for the poll, but you want to join in for the quiz, the PIN number is 2251929. So if you look on the chat, it's there as well. So there is a prize for the winner. So this is where we start earning points. So I think originally we were planning it and being an Amazon voucher, but given some of the conversation today, you know, about getting your diet in check, you are allowed to treat yourself. So if you want to swap your Amazon voucher, I'm quite sure we could maybe make it a Just Eat voucher instead, but we'll contact the winner by email separately and we'll arrange the prize. So it's worth taking part. It'll be worth trying hard at these questions. And I'll just shut up now and move on to the right screen. Okay, hopefully you can all see that screen. So that was the results of the poll, which was the first question on the quiz. But we're now going to move into the real stuff and test the grey matter. So hopefully you're all still logged into Kahoot. And if you've not logged in the first time, you can get quickly logged in. Game pins at the bottom of the screen there. So question number 1 in earnest. Multiple choice, emotional well-being is, choose your answers on your Kahoot app. Glad to see pretty much everyone was still logged in. We haven't lost anyone. That's great news. Well, we lost one. And 27 people got it right. When I can manage my emotions and feelings, feeling happy all the time. I can understand why a couple of you went for that. But the correct answer, according to Lesley, is definitely yellow. And the referee's decision is very definitely final in this quiz. Okay, let's see how the leaderboard's looking. I hope that's not Lesley that's actually that actually put the quiz together. I hope that's a different Lesley at the top of the table. You get extra points for being quick on the trigger as well, folks. So you can decide whether it's a marathon and not a sprint, or if you're feeling confident, you can go in quick and you'll get extra points. So we'll show you the top 5 each time. It's telling us that Rowan is the highest climber. I'm not quite sure how it works that one out when I'm only one question in, but never mind. Next question. How many people suffer from mental health issues in any one year? Like, there's a couple of people who take the cautious approach, take their time to answer. A couple of more seconds. No, a couple of people didn't answer there. So the correct answer is 1 in 4. So 17 people got that correct, and 7 people went for 1 and 2. There's not quite as much as 1 and 2. 1 and 4 was the answer. Let's see what the leaderboard has done there. Leslie's still in the lead. Very tight at the top. Mel, Indy, Debbie, and Gav are. Okay, next question. Here we go. What proportion of people with mental health problems experience stigma? And the answer is 90%, very, very high. 90% of people with mental health experience stigma. The leaderboard, oh, we have a change in the leaderboard. Debbie's managed to sneak into first place, and they're close behind in second. Richard Abdi, he's an internal. Look, he's in there. No one internally other than the presenters have seen this quiz, by the way, ladies and gents. So we're not promising to give away a fake voucher for the winner. Next question, question number 5. Employee engagement is the same as employee satisfaction. True or false? I think we're sitting at 27 Kahoot participants, so I'm still waiting on one more. And the answer is false. It is not the same. Employee engagement is different from employee satisfaction. It's not exactly the same. Okay, let's see the leaderboard now. Have we had any changes? So Mel moved into second place. Debbie's still holding her own out in front. Question 6. Which of these UK Prime Ministers experienced mental health problems? The answer is Winston Churchill. So quite an interesting one, that one. 8 of you have went for Gordon Brown and 2 went for Tony Blair. I better not get political. So look at the leaderboard. Oh, we have a new leader. Mel has strolled into the lead with Richard Abdi in a close second place. Very good, well done. 4 to go. What proportion of people with mental health problems believe that workplace stress contributes to their illness? The answer was 2 and 3, so the majority of you getting that one right. Well done. 2 and 3. 8 of you went for 1 and 3, and 4 of you went for 2 and 5. Let's see if there's any change. Oh, we have another change. We have Deb's moved into first place now. Lesley is climbing back up the leaderboard, and 3 players have just hit an answer streak of 4 questions in a row. They're doing well, still very tight, plenty of points to play for. These are positive related to employee engagement. What do you think is positively related to employee engagement? There may be more than one correct answer. There are actually 3 correct answers, so all of you got it right. You all get the points there. You're well done. Bureaucracy is very definitely not positive related to employee engagement. That keeps a wee slight change in the top 5. Richard slipping down the table there. Lesley hot on the heels of Deb's. 3 questions to go. What's the definition of mental health? What is the definition of mental health? "24 of you got it correct, so well done. The answer is psychological and emotional well-being. Next question. What you're all missing out on is the music. I get this great Kahoot music, which I'm bopping along to when we're waiting on the answers coming in, and I've just realised that you're not hearing any of that because it's in my earphones. Oh, so Deb's has increased her lead. Lesley's still in second place. 2 questions to go. This can still change. Here we go. Before Mental Health Act was made law, what were some people with mental health problems prohibited from doing? So what were you not allowed to do before the Mental Health Act was brought into law? Couple of more answers to go. There we go. The answer is yes, serve as an MP. So there we have a little bit of a spread, but the vast majority going for the correct answer. Well done, everyone. Let's see if that's changed the table, and it has. Lesley has moved into the lead. Well done, Lesley. Mark H has been in that top 5 for a while, so there we go. This is good. It's really close. Okay, this is the final question. True or false? We all have mental health. One more answer to go. Nope, lost another player. And the answer is true. So well done. Everyone got that correct. That's great. Good way to end. So let's have a look at the final table. It'll be to do with how quick you've been on the trigger. So the podium, 3rd place, Lesley. She did well. She was up there in the lead for a while. Deb's in 2nd place, which means the winner, and the winner of the voucher is Mark H. Sat quietly in the middle of the table, and he was in quick on that last question. Runners up 4th and 5th, we have Debbie and then Fee. Well done, everyone. Just click that. So feel free to give us some feedback if you would like. And with that, I will hand you back over to Anne just to sum up the event. So thanks for taking part, guys.
So well done, everybody. I think you'll enjoy that. It was a bit of fun about a fairly serious topic. So I really hope you've all enjoyed today's event. We're sort of coming up to the end. We're actually over time, but I'm glad most of you have been able to stay with us. I know you've all got busy schedules and diaries, so that's appreciated. Before I kind of just finish in summary, I wanted to introduce another one of my colleagues, Debbie Bicker, who's going to talk to you about our next event, which is next Thursday at the same time. Debbie, do you want to just talk about your event and the one that you're hosting next week?
Yeah, that would be great. First of all, can I just say, Anne and Lesley, that was absolutely fantastic. I mean, I would call myself a bit of a mental health warrior, and there's been so many takeaways that I've scribbled down there. So I'll be gobsmacked if everyone hasn't at least got a couple of things to take away, either for themselves or for their team. So it was a brilliant way to start off our series of events. So well done, ladies. That was fantastic.
Thanks,
so next week we are hosting number 2, which is going to be stay home, stay safe, stay secure. and that's going to be about for companies that are taking payments online or over the telephone or any omni-channel environment. Now, what's happening just now is people are sending their staff home to work, and they might not necessarily have the right things in place to make that secure and safe. So really next week, what we want to talk about is the risks, the risks and responsibilities, to make you aware of the things that you can do, that very simple things that you can make and put in place to make your organisation and keep your reputation well, because something going wrong with fraud or PCI compliance could be really detrimental to your staff and their well-being and indeed your organisation. So we've got some fantastic speakers next week. I'm really looking forward to you hearing them, because they've got a really great story to tell, and we'll see you on the 21st at 11 o'clock. If you haven't registered, please do so, and we'll be sending links out later today to show you where to do that.
Brilliant, thanks Debbie. Yeah, we've been sharing about these events on all the social channels, LinkedIn, Twitter and Facebook. But if you haven't got access to any of them, or you haven't seen the information about the event, just message us via the chat, or drop us a line afterwards, and we can certainly send you a link to register if that's something you're interested in. Thanks very much, Debbie. I think in the interest of time, we were going to invite some people to ask questions kind of live on screen if they wanted to. We are a bit over time, or just exactly on 12 o'clock just now. So I think what we'll do is we'll keep it to the chat function, but rest assured we will absolutely come back to everybody with answers to your questions, and really appreciate your participation. Paul's assured me that the chat's been going crazy and lots of people have got lots of things to say, which is exactly what we wanted. We knew that this event would cause a lot of thought provoking within people's own environment, and they would have lots to say and lots of things to share. So that's brilliant, exactly what we wanted. So all that's left for me to do really is to say thank you so much for joining us today. It's the first one we've done. I'll be honest, I was a bit nervous about certainly the technology that we were using to support it, because it was a sort of brave new world we were using. I did have one blip, which was a shame, but we got back on track. So I don't think it was sort of detrimental, and I'm quite sure my colleagues in Lesley filled the gaps while I got everything back together again. So I just want you all to stay home, stay safe and stay well, and thank you once again.
Thanks everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.